Hello there, my name is Solmaz, and you are listening to Tabling Thoughts podcast. In this podcast, I talk about my experiences as a relationship coach and psychotherapist. The little things that I noticed in my clients' day to day lives, which may affect the quality of their lives and relationships enormously, and for some reasons, they don't pay that much of attention to them. As I mentioned, I'm a relationship coach and I also practice as a psychotherapist in Ontario, Canada. In order to get more information about me, you may check my Instagram account, YouTube, or my other podcasts via the links in description. You're listening to the 25th episode of Tabling Thoughts podcast, and in this episode, I'm going to talk about compassion fatigue. Compassion fatigue is often described as the emotional and physical exhaustion that caregivers, helpers, and people in compassionate roles experience due to prolonged exposure to the suffering of others or some certain circumstances. It is sometimes referred to as secondary traumatic stress because it arises from the emotional burden of empathy rather than direct trauma. The phenomenon is common among therapists, nurses, social workers, teachers, first responders, and anyone who works closely with people in stress. During Iran's movement almost 2 years ago, there were many people who experienced compassion fatigue because we were all exposed to extraordinary number of news which we were extremely compassionate about, but we couldn't do anything about it. We could feel the pain, but we couldn't do anything. Nothing at all, but at the same time, it was so affecting us without being able to do something as useful as we could even think about. At its core, compassion fatigue happens when the emotional resources of an individual become depleted from constantly caring for or supporting others, or thinking about their misery and pain. While empathy is a strength, overextending it without proper boundaries or self-care can lead to this state of exhaustion. So let's see, there are several factors contributing to compassion fatigue. One of them is continuous exposure to suffering. Constantly being exposed to others' pain, trauma, or grief can drain emotional reserves. Having difficulty separating other people's problems, dramas from personal life can blur lines and lead to burnout. That's why we need to set certain boundaries. Another factor which may cause compassion fatigue is unrealistic expectations. Believing that you must always be available, helpful, or successful at elevating others' pain. Or worse, thinking that if we don't check the news, if we don't constantly make sure that what's happening on the other side of the world shows that we are not as empathetic as we should be. High emotional investment is another factor. Being overly attached to the outcome of a situation or feeling a personal responsibility to fix everything for everyone else will cause humongous pain for us. Compassion fatigue has been identified in people with heavy workloads, long hours, and high pressure environments, which could exacerbate emotional fatigue. Any kind of empathy without recovery could deeply cause compassion fatigue. So let's see what are the symptoms of this kind of fatigueness. There are some common symptoms such as emotional exhaustion, reduced empathy or feeling numbness, increased frustration or irritability, difficulty concentrating, sleep disturbance or fatigue, physical symptoms such as headache, muscle tense, withdrawal from personal relationships or hobbies, and worst of them is the extreme amount of stress and anxiety this kind of fatigue may cause for us. While compassion fatigue is a natural response to emotional overload, there are some steps to prevent and address it effectively. The first one, and the most important one, I think, is set healthy boundaries. Learn to separate work or caregiving responsibilities, news, your friendship from your personal life. It's okay to say no when you feel you're overwhelmed. I have learned as a psychotherapist to block out an hour at the end of each day to decompress and avoid taking work calls and emails and incidents during evenings and weekends. Practice self-care. Prioritize activities that recharge you emotionally and physically, such as exercise, hobbies, or spending time with loved ones. One of the good practices of self-care could be attending a weekly yoga class or ensuring that you have enough of time for yourself to at least read kind of your favorite book for 10 minutes before you go to bed, or plan a weekend hike with friends to reconnect with nature. Always seek support. Talk with colleagues, friends, or a therapist about your feelings. Sharing the emotional burden can lighten its weight. Take breaks. Allow yourself time to spend away from caregiving roles or high stress environment to recharge. You can arrange a time with a trusted friend or family member to take over part of your responsibilities for a few hours each week or every day to help you to go for a walk, watch a movie, and simply rest. Mindfulness and relaxation techniques help a lot. Engage in practices like meditation, deep breathing, or yoga to reduce stress and improve emotional resilience. Adjust expectations. Understand that you cannot fix everything and everyone's problem or take away from all suffering. Focus on providing support without overextending yourself. And last but not least, education and awareness will be the biggest quality for you. Recognize the early signs of compassion fatigue in yourself, even in others, to intervene before it worsens. You can attend a workshop on compassion fatigue where you can learn to recognize its signs and develop coping mechanisms such as journaling, delegating tasks when feeling overwhelmed. Each of these examples highlights actionable ways that you can take care of your mental health and emotional well-being while continuing your compassionate work, while continuing to be a good member of your family, friends, or taking care of the patient, or taking care of the loved ones that need you. My friends, I hope this episode of this podcast is helpful for you. Please jot down in comments other kind of topics you want me to talk about. And please, till next episode, take good care of yourself.